So welcome to maybe it's the fifth online storytelling Zoom event. I don't even know what to call this, but it's we get to do a great story. One of my favorite. I'm so excited to share this with you. Some of you have heard it, but I want to take it to some some deeper territory. And we're going to do some details. We're going to do our usually traditional thing that some of you are familiar with. Most of you are familiar with finding a detail that'll be different than before, even if you've heard the story before. But also in the coming weeks, we're going to do what we did with the Rainmaker, which was to go into more, some of the deeper territory and get more of the harvest, more of the teachings, more of the strengths, more of the gifts, and more of the wisdom, beauty, and truth that's in these stories. So yeah, on a day like today, I just want to literally, you guys all came up at the top of the screen, and the sun came in behind you. So I'm figuring it's a great sign that we're here, and I'm really grateful. I know that lots of you could do with the story, but I'm also know that lots of you could be doing other things. We could be out in the garden. We could be writing poetry. We could be doing any number of other things. And I really appreciate you spending the time with me here today. And I do know that we need to honor the fact that we're on a territory here. We need to go all the way back. So let me just say that and get us into that way of thinking. As Christine says, she's very grateful today that somehow she's been spared. We've all been spared somehow. We've walked down the right side of the street. We've maybe hesitated going into a grocery store, or maybe we've done the right things consciously or unconsciously, and we're here today sometimes because of the grace of the universe, the grace of our inner strength and our wisdom. So to honor that, to honor the territory of the Musqueam, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Squamish bands. Before that, there of course are the five elements: fire, water, earth, nature, and mineral rock. We have the creepy crawlies, the four-legged ones, the scaled ones, and the feathered ones, other kinds of fauna. We've had tons of flora before that. We have, of course, the contomble, which are the little mini people, as we call them in Ireland, that were here between just animals and humans. And we've had also many ancestors of ourselves and other people and family members that have gone before us that are also here because we're on there. We somehow came from that lineage. We were honored and blessed with their teachings, their presences. And I always bring saints of all religions and great teachers and shamans from all around the world, as well as the great silence, a great mystery. I want us to just honor that. And so just knowing that we are supported, knowing that we are held by some mysterious force, ourselves included, that we get to breathe. And we get to breathe into a story today, but what we've been doing is we've been doing some little ritual and developing some rituals around writing our names in the chat line, just to make sure you put your name into the circle, because this is a bit weird to have this kind of space, and we're in that living room there, but I'm here and you guys are in your living room. And I want to say that what we've done in the past, if you guys can just put your name in the circle by writing down your name in the chat and just adding it in there. And it might be one word like gratitude, like Christine had, that you are feeling today as from where you are right now. And so that's the first part. The second part is to bring an inanimate object or a candle, I usually light a candle, but I've got my rascally Mexican skull, which I really love, reminds me of aliveness. And bring something, a flower, a rock, a crystal, something that allows us to make this place a little bit more sacred than it is. And then I'll meet you back here in a couple of minutes, 30 seconds. I'm going to go light my candle. You guys do that, write your names in, and then we'll all get started. Yeah, so Christine wrote, grateful. Yes, very grateful. Susan, welcome, Susan. Hope, yes, we need hope. I think these stories provide a little bit of hope. Penelope, humor, absolutely. Hopefully we'll have some good laughs today. And then, yeah. So I don't know if Roxanne, there's from Ben, optimistic. Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, this is, it's funny. Some people are really feeling that optimism, and it's deep inside of them, and it seems to be bubbling up. I've heard that a few times. Roxanne, there's a little, why do, I don't know Roxanne. Oh, I said honor. Oh, honor. But we can do humor too. Oh, sorry, I read it wrong. So there you go. I'm not, Penelope's word is honor, not humor. But okay, maybe we're doing both, you know. Roxanne, there's a little chat button at the bottom. If you click on that, then I think you can put in your word. Am I just not scrolling down enough? Or call Roxanne, just call out your name, the word that because I got you unmuted.
Peace.
Peace. Okay, wonderful. Okay, great. We've got peace, and Roxanne's got peace in there. Great. Okay, I'm going to mute everyone again. Yeah, there we go. Okay, yes. So, yeah, so that little ritual is just a way of making, we can't go to temples and churches. Well, as Kaylee says, we go up to out into nature, and that is the cathedral. That's becoming so evident, I think, to so many of us. We get to go down to the ocean or into the cathedral. I'm hoping you guys get to do that. But also, we have an opportunity to reimagine this collective space, this online space, to be something that could hold a little bit of. We can reimagine it as something sacred and something that's got some sacred liberation and belonging in it. I know musicians are playing online. I know artists are doing great things. I know fashion designers are sharing. Like, there's a tremendous amount of this kind of collective village making, I want to call it, that's going on, and it's very exciting to me. And really, the heroes are starting to be. I carry on in a story about a butcher, baker, candlestick maker. Well, I mean, the butcher is turning out to be a really important person, and we need to have that food. He's on front line, duty, and we're bowing down to him and banging pots. And the baker, oh my God, what would we do without our baker? We're starting to really reimagine who the gifted ones are, I think, and giving good value and proper credit where it needs to go. So it's a good thing. And the word for me, I would say, is beauty. This story is really, to me, about beauty. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as time goes on. So that's my word. As we go along, of course, you guys can relax into the story, but as we go along, if you have any questions, you can just put them into the chat there, and I'm happy to, at the end, we'll be able to field some questions, but we'll definitely put our details in there and talk about that. Did I forget about anything other than, yeah, we'll try to finish up on time, around 1, maybe a little bit after. As always, anything, this is confidential for us. And if anything ever comes up for you, I want you to consider sending me an email, and we can talk about that. I mean, the stories, sometimes stories can be very strong and powerful that way. So love for you guys for you to know that that's an option. Just send me an email and we can have a conversation. So yeah. All right. So, okay. So once, right? Once upon a time, there was, of course, a little village, and quite quaint, had its usual suspects. Right beside Google and Apple and Amazon, there was the butcher, baker, candlestick maker, all sharing a space along Main Street. There was the winemaking that went on from elderberry wine, elderberries. There was, fresh bread that was being made, of course. There was milk that was coming from the cow that was fresh every morning. The usual comings and goings, and if you could throw a Starbucks in there and a bookstore and a music store, you got the picture. Now, in this village, there was this little young girl whose time it was for her to be initiated. Everybody knew it. She knew it. She was a little bit lost, wandering around, bumping into things, kind of not really knowing what her purpose is, what her treasure is, what her gifts are, where the meaningful life is for her. And when she talked about a meaningful life, what that really meant, translated, was her aliveness. And she had no idea. And she was getting down, and she was anxious, and she was spending too much time in the basement eating Boston pizza, and of course playing too many video games and all the rest of it. But she knew it was her day, and she was on her way out. And of course, everybody gathered at the village gates. Now, not lost on any of you that she was, of course, fairly innocent. She'd never been outside the gates. She was smart about, what went on inside the gates, but she was also pretty wise for her age, and everybody knew that. And as she's walking out of the village, she, of course, looked back 7.13 times, looking at the smiling faces that she was familiar with, at the warm homes that she shared dinners with, and the great collective that was her village. It got smaller and smaller and smaller as she walked further and further away. And the tears were starting to come down, and she was starting to recognize that, I'm not sure I should be doing this. This is a little scary. And at the same time, when she turned and looked the other way, she noticed that there was a bit of a stride came into her step, and she started to get excited, actually. The truth is, she was on her way to discover her destiny. And this is no small thing. So she put that all behind her and was ready to go into full stride when she heard, of course, in her ears, "Don't go near Freedom Mountain. Nobody ever comes back from Freedom Mountain." In case you didn't get Patty Longlegs' message, stay away from Freedom Mountain. Well, she thought, this is just the weird old elders. This is what they do is say crazy stuff. And what do they know? She's obviously young enough and strong enough and wise enough to be able to handle this. And away she went. Well, of course, a little bit of time went by, didn't it? Maybe it was a short time. Maybe it was a long time. She did bump into a big signpost, and on top of the signpost, of course, were signs going every which way. Signs to Dublin that way, New York that way, LA that way, Buenos Aires that way. If you wanted to really have some fun, well, head down to, Sri Lanka over that way. She didn't know what to do. She said to herself, which way should I go? What's the direction for me today? and she couldn't figure it out. And then she stepped a little closer and squinted her eyes. And of course, at the very top, she saw a sign saying that was very small and really worn out, saying, Freedom Mountain, this way. So she, of course, did her roundabout twist and turn and shuffle and two-step and walk down that path, because what's a teenager to do but do exactly what the elders told her not to do. And she remembered that's what they said. Don't go near Freedom Mountain. Well, it behooves a young person to do exactly what she's not supposed to do, especially in her teen years. She also remembered her Aunt Marigold before she left, who had given her a bracelet that was her mom's. And she was remembering the bracelet and walking down the path and thinking, well, I'm glad I have this, because now the path was starting to disappear. And the time may have been a long time, a short time, it might have been days, it might have been weeks, but the truth is, she was glad she had her bracelet. She's glad she had Aunt Marigold, because she had lost her mom when she was 9 years old. And now she felt like she was carrying Aunt Marigold with her and her mom's bracelet. Of course, her auntie had said to her that ever if she get into any kind of trouble, she will remember who she is as this courageous person, as her mom was, if she just held on to her bracelet and rubbed a couple of the stones together. So there she was on the path, walking, and it was 1 minute sunny, and the next it was starting to get dark. It just happened like that. It started to get a little misty too. And of course, the darkness was starting to get a bit smelly. In fact, putridly smelly. It was now coming at her with somehow a vengeance, and this path is gone, and the clouds and the mist was showing up, and the hairs on the back of her neck were standing up, and she was slowing down to almost a halt, trying to find her way through the brambles now, thinking, this is something wrong here. This is freedom. Where is that path? Going very slowly and fearfully, when all of a sudden, kaboom, there is Baba Yaga. And she is that much closer than you ever want a witch to be. And we're talking inches, and her pointy nose was practically touching her nose, and her scaly skin was practically flaking all over her, and her eyeball was swinging and practically bumping into her, and her teeth that were going every which way and green and rotting were giving off this putrid smell, and this skirt that had been wrapped around her 317 times and hadn't been washed in 317 years and was 317 yards long was all of a sudden coming at her with a hat that had rats on it, and bird shit landed everywhere, and cobwebs and spiders, and you get the picture. She said, who are you and what's your business? Well, inside our little heroine's head, it was going very quickly through some options. One, I could run. Maybe not. You don't outrun a witch. Play dead? I'm not sure that's going to work. What if I just beg for my life? Probably not a good idea. And then at that moment, something happened. She remembered her mother's bracelet. She rubbed the rocks together, and all of a sudden, she stood up inside of herself and remembered the courageous person that she was. And she said, surprise to her as well, these words came out of her and said, oh my, look at you. You are a sight to behold. Listen, thank you so much I'm really happy to make your acquaintance. I'm not going to bother you one bit. I'm just going to wander up the path here. I'm on my way to Freedom Mountain. I promise to look you up on the way back for some almond cakes and cookies. Maybe some tea. Well, the witch, stunned that anybody had ever got past her, said, well, who was she? She really stood in her power and really knew who she was. Who was that woman? As she wandered back to her compound. not just to remember the compound and the image of where she lived, just to get a really good, clear idea of, for you guys about that. There were stakes in the ground all the way around, outlining her compound. On top of the stakes were the skulls. At the base of the stakes were the bones of people that somehow she had eaten. And of course, there was a chicken hut right in the middle. That is a chicken leg with a hut on top of it that swayed in the wind somehow. Home sweet home. You know how witches live. Anyway, our little heroine couldn't wait to get the wind at her back, to get away from that smell, but also to find a way to get to the top of Freedom Mountain. Well, we know how this story goes. It may be a long time, it was maybe a short time, but eventually she found herself right at the peak of Freedom Mountain, looking down, and she could see in the distance, if she squinted her eyes again, her village. She was so excited to have arrived. And of course, some more time had passed before she came down. And in that time, apparently, she had gone through a few bad hair days. She had gone through a few root canals. She had gone through some tremendous adventures. She had discovered not only the meaning of life, she had discovered her aliveness. She had discovered what it is exactly that she needs to do when she gets back to that village. Kind of chuffed with herself, and at the same time feeling very humble, and at the same time in her own authority, and okay to walk with a bit of vulnerability and strength simultaneously stitched together. She came across on the path the way down a funny sound, which went like this. Of course, couldn't be anything else. It was about the same time, about the same place, about the same latitude and longitude as when she bumped into Baba Yaga. She thought twice about the almond cakes and tea, and she thought twice about waking up a witch, because let's face it, you don't want to wake up a witch, right? So she kept going, overrid her promise, and wandered back down, and of course got back to the village. And didn't all the elders and all the people meet her there and celebrate with her and bring out the wine and the bread and the music and the dancers and everybody else that needed to come, because nobody had been to Freedom Mountain and lived, let alone lived and come back to tell their story. Well, that celebration went on for a while, and it was said that she, over the next period of time, a long time or a short time, shared those stories of her great adventures on Freedom Mountain. Many a tale was told, mostly to the butcher, baker, candlestick maker, but anybody else that wanted to hear, they would also hear, and they would also then be inspired to go and climb Freedom Mountain from hearing the stories. And apparently they had written a song about this young person, she who climbed Freedom Mountain and lived. There were 23 verses. That's a lot of verses for a song. But you can hear those songs still being sung as people walk up Cypress or Whistler or Blackcomb on their way to discover their freedom, their destiny, their aliveness, their purpose in the world. And of course, that brings us back right into this room and right back into your Freedom Mountain. So we need to stop this part of the story here. We need to stop this part of the description of Baba Yaga that can go on for days and days and days. And we need to talk now a little bit about some of the details that you found. That's the first order of business, as you know. So if you can, hit the chat button down below, or actually, why don't we unmute, and then everybody can, one at a time, popcorn style, pick a detail. Not an explanation of it, so much just a detail, like you did pick a word, and it could have been the same detail that you had picked before. If you'd heard the story before, it could be something completely different. So try to make it as fresh as possible and stay with what makes sense, and then call them out, and I'm going to write them down. Am I going to write them down? Yeah, I'm going to write them down. I think that's. I'll write them down, and you guys do this the way you do it. So who's got the first detail?
I can go first.
Yeah, that's Penelope.
The kind of two. The first one was stood inside of herself.
Was the what?
She stood inside of herself.
She stood inside of herself.
And then the other part was bad hair day. Bad hair days.
Nice. We all know what those are like. Yeah. And then, okay, good. That's great. That's two. Now, honestly, only one person gets to have two. For some reason, Penelope gets it too. If you can keep it to one, great, is what I'm hoping. If you were to pick one of those that's standing out the most for you, Penelope?
I think stood inside of herself.
Yeah. Okay. That means bad hair day is up for grabs too, you know, if that really landed for some people. Keep going. Who wants to stay next?
I was curious about the rubbing together of the pieces, you know, that she was given.
The bracelet.
Yeah, the bracelet.
Ah, rubbing the bracelet. Okay.
And then of course the subsequent, you know, what that meant to her, what it did.
How it resurrected her courage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Aladdin or something. Rubbing the pot and something. Yeah. Okay, very good. Yeah. Let's keep going. Susan, what was your detail?
Well, I'm having trouble deciding between the bracelet and the witch.
Pick one.
I got to pick one, so I'll go with the witch.
Go with the witch. Yeah. Somebody's got to pick the witch. It might as well be you, Susan. What the hell? Yeah. Let's have some fun with that. Let's find out where that is for everyone. Yeah. So, okay. Let's keep going. Wow. This is great. Roxanne?
When she got to the sign and
I'm
there were
fucking on.
all the different directions she could go.
So the signpost.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she actually could have gone anywhere, but she stayed on with Freedom Mountain. She went down that path.
Yeah. Interesting, right? Yeah. Very cool. Okay. Marilyn, you joined us. Are you there? Can you did you hear some of the story?
Hi, I'm just driving home, so
Oh, okay.
I put mine in the chat. I put mine in the chat, and I'll connect in a few minutes when I get home.
Oh, okay. No worries. Let's do that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I put mine in the chat. The swinging eyeball.
Funny.
Yeah, the swinging eyeball and bad teeth. Okay, great. Beautiful.
Bad hair. Oh my God.
Right? Yeah. Okay, good. And then Christine, did you pick a spot?
Which direction to go?
Which direction? Yeah. Okay. Wow, we got some great details. I don't know what it is. I just so love this story. I gotta tell you, it's just I feel like I'm bouncing like a little kid when I get to tell this. I've been so excited for days. I feel like it's like my favorite song or something.
It was well presented, Michael. All of that joy in you about the story showed.
Ah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so who wants to jump in and say, where are these details in your life, right? How is this one detail right now speaking to you and reflecting to you some teaching for your life. And again, popcorn style, just jump in.
I'm having a little technical difficulty, so somebody go ahead.
Okay. Susan, do you want to start us off with the witch?
Okay.
Where's the witch in your life right now? Where's that?
Well, I think it was her reaction to, I mean, yeah, witches come along, and they, I think they appear to be witches, and they appear to be trouble, and they appear to be a lot of things. With swing, and the swinging eyeball and the bad teeth really gave me a giggle.
Yeah.
But I think that for me, it's those obstacles and what that come along, those really big challenges, and just like this, what we're dealing with now with a pandemic, this huge challenge that everybody on earth is being faced with in various degrees, and how they deal with this particular witch in humanity itself is such an individual manner. Everybody will deal with it in different ways. Some are caught just in surviving it, and others will, it's just very different. And there'll be all grades of how you approach the witch. Says a lot about where you're personally at. And she faced it with just going around the witch, not getting caught in the drama, just avoiding the drama. And I think that
is that where the witch is in your life, Susan?
I think so. I think having the courage to just avoid or not stop and be frozen by it, or not be inhibited by it, or overcome by it or anything. You just observing it and moving on, and say, okay, that was a scary thing, and that was a terrible experience, etc. But moving on from that, and I think in the moving on or choosing to move on is where the gift, one of the gifts of the witch is, because it shows you the strength to keep going towards your goal, which is freedom.
Yeah. So that's great, Susan. And but what did she avoid her, or did she acknowledge her? I mean, this is to me one of the key things in the story.
I agree with you. I mean, the easiest thing is to simply deny it and move on, deny that it's there, etc.
Yeah.
I like to choose that she got the nudge to keep moving, that it was not to be affected. And I think that meeting the witch is where the choice is made. Do I confront this, deal with it, fight it, look at it, observe it, learn from it, etc.? Do I simply deny it and move on and pretend it never existed or doesn't exist, etc.? I don't know what she did, but I think that, that sense of avoidance came to me at the moment, although I didn't relate to it, because I think that, I don't know. Maybe I don't. Maybe I do. I don't think so, but it could be.
Yeah.
That's a choice you get to make. You can still appear to be brave and everything, but really what you're doing is avoiding it. Or
well, let's go there. Like, what do you guys think? What did she do what do the rest of you think that she did that when the witch came? Because all of a sudden she was there, right up close and personal. What did she actually do if we slow it down to the minutia, like that tiny moment there? Because I mean, one split second and a wrong decision, she's right. She's on top of it. Yeah.
She stood inside of herself, took a breath, and then moved on her path.
She did, right? She stood inside of herself. She got back into who she was. She had the bracelet to remember her, to help her, and she stood inside of herself. But the first thing out of her mouth was what? Oh my! You are a scary.
Yeah.
No, she said, "Oh my, you are a sight to behold."
Yeah.
Yeah.
If she had told her that she was ugly or she was scary or that she was smelly or something like that, I mean, what would have happened?
She'd have
Might
triggered the
have got it.
witch.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think there is something about this detail that is, we just need to get a lot, I think, better at acknowledging our own witches, our own shadows, our own moods, our own tone of intolerance.
Mhm.
And I don't mean we have to go through all the details and therapize it so much as sometimes it's just acknowledging that we have a witch right there. Oh, I've got a mood on today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Here I am, I'm stuck in the crapper today. You know, I'm really in the mud. And if we just say that out loud, we acknowledge that, then somehow it turns better. We were talking the other weeks gone by about, you know, Kaylee got up one morning after we were doing the morning meditation, and she came and she goes, "Oh my God, I need a hug. That was so great. Thank you for doing the meditation." And I said, "Yeah, that was good." And then she said, "You know, I really woke up on the wrong side of the bed." And I said, "I did too," or I said it first. I can't remember. And we both acknowledged that the witch was around. And so, you know, we just both said, "Oh my God, that, like, yeah, this is not fun." And so the witch was there, and then she went out and she said she had a great day after that. Whereas before she would have not acknowledged it and had a miserable day.
Right.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Because now the witch has got you in her grips, right? The mood has grabbed you.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is this making sense? So when if we can fully acknowledge that we're human, and we do have foibles, and we do have challenges, and we do have witches, and we do have moments, we also have the other side of beauty, which is we also have a lot of gifts and a lot of strengths and resources and all the rest of it. But it is this business of acknowledgement, I think, that this story speaks about. Because she's the only one that gets to Freedom Mountain. And right, this is where rubber hits the road. Are you going to get past Baba Yaga or not? Because she's the one that is trying to wake people up to the fact that they just need to honor a deeper level of beauty. It's like we can all look at ourselves when we're looking great in the mirror, but what happens when we look funny? We wake up beside ourselves, or we're feeling overweight, or we're feeling like grumpy, or we've got an eyeball hanging down, or something in the morning. You know, stuff it back in there. We're having a bad hair day. If we can just acknowledge, you know, that this is part of being human, it's okay. It would do a lot to keep that kind of perfectionism and that kind of, you know, intolerance and that we have for other kinds of imperfection, or other kinds of, in Ireland we call it other kinds of beauty. There's, you know, there's beauty that we like to see, and then there's beauty that's kind of moody, and then there's kind of out and out stuff that is just really hard to see, like people dying, like you know, somebody, you know, like smelly stuff, you know, like bad breath, or, you know, like all those things. So it's something about us getting better at embracing those parts of ourselves that a lot of people are bumping into right now in this COVID crisis, because they're being pushed into it. Yeah. So that makes sense, right? What we're in that detail, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Susan?
Yeah. No, that is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was really good one.
Yeah. So for us is, I don't know, there's a hell of an invitation here right now. For all of us, when you're being in this COVID, we're back on our own, and we're bumping into parts of ourselves that maybe we're not proud of, or we're not particularly enamored with. But can we find a way to acknowledge that witch inside of us? And male, you know, Ben, we're male, and men have witches, pretty good witches actually. And sometimes we project that witch all over a woman or a partner. And so then she becomes witchy or bitchy or what have you. And that's not fair either. But women have witches, and they also have dragons if they want, and they can put them all over the men as well. And that is coming out I'm working with couples, of course, through COVID right now, and a lot of the witches coming out between people. And so just slowing it down and remember to No. We've all got these. I'm sorry. That's my witch. No, I wouldn't need my witch, because if you put your witch all over someone else, then you don't have the power to change, right? You need to hold on to your witch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of my teachers used to say, sometimes men have to go to their wives and say, "Give me my witch back. Give me my witch back. I want my witch back. You know, I've given it to you and you've taken it and now I want it back," you know, and because then he needs to upgrade it. He needs to transform it. He needs to acknowledge it, love that part of himself that is
Yeah.
so desperate.
Mhm.
Yeah, accepting responsibility for that is really key, isn't it?
Yeah,
Responsibility for who you are, not projecting it on someone else.
yeah. And when we do, okay, my bad, you know, like, Kaylee, I'm sorry. There it is. I put my witch all over you. No, this is mine. No. And then I can do something with it. But I can't, like, out there, it loses, you know, like, it can go all sorts of weird ways, right? As we know. Yeah. So that's good. So the first, I'm glad you picked the witch, Susan, because that's the acknowledgement piece is huge.
Yeah. And that's a tough one too.
It's a really tough one. It's a really tough one. We could spend a long time talking about how do we do that well, right? How do we do that well? We all know how to do it badly. You know, I guarantee we got PhDs in how to not to do it.
And that's where the real freedom is, isn't it? Acknowledging that.
Well, this is the whole setting of the story, isn't it? She's teaching the young Asia to acknowledge the fact that she's human, and you know, she's got some gifts, she's got some destiny, she's got some golden threads there that she's got to mobilize, but she's not going to go anywhere towards freedom if she doesn't get this acknowledged business.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, hi Mary Lynn. Yeah,
Yeah.
welcome.
Hi, I just wanted to, hang on, I'm just going to start the video. Okay, so I just want to say, you've been saying acknowledge, and I would venture to say embrace. I've been embracing my witch because of this, and and so I've been like literally living this every day since the COVID started, and
because you lost your tooth. Because
well, the whole thing came out like just a week before the coronavirus shutdown. I have no dentist, indefinitely no dentist. So, you know, this whole I've had to embrace the ugliness and, you know, feeling like the bad teeth and the hanging eyeball, like really like embracing my ugliness. And what kind of turned it into is like I've used humor. I just keep laughing about it and going, it couldn't be more perfectly wrong. And so then I go, well, why is this happening? And I've been asking myself that a lot. And I think it's just because it's challenging me to let go of my vanity, because I have that, like a lot of women, like, you know, I have vanity. And so I've been practicing not having vanity, and also embracing, you know, I've been embracing sort of the ugliness of our bodies, because I've been working with very, you know, advanced seniors with a lot of problems, and there's a lot of ugliness in that. And I actually I've embraced their like sort of physical, emotional, and, you know, even a pain in terms of their appearance. Like I've been embracing that for 10 years working with seniors. So I actually see beauty in the ugliness in a weird way.
Beautiful.
Because there's such huge vulnerability there.
Beautiful.
Yeah, kind of like being caught with your pants down, but like all day long, 24/7, you know?
That
like,
describes the whole isolation, doesn't it?
And, you know, that whole, I'm sorry, I missed part of the story, but I think the underbelly of this whole thing is actually, it's, you know, it's far beyond appearances and, you know, beauty or this and that. It's actually, it's that the mountain, the freedom is the emotional freedom to not worry about how we look or how we come across, or sometimes we, you know, we're a bit edgy or, you know, a little bit off. And if we can just embrace all the colors of our own rainbows, then we've got full freedom. So yeah, that's
thank you. So let's just stay with that for a second, just a little. Let's just drink that in. I mean, that's beautiful. That's the acknowledgement and the embracing. Yeah, in the end, that's the deeper beauty that maybe we're being invited into here. Yeah. Yeah. Letting go of all sorts of ideas of ourselves. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, let's make sure. Ben, thank you for that, Marilyn. Thank you, Susan. That's so great. Let's keep going. Ben, you said something about, yeah. Marilyn, you said, yeah, we were all like caught with our pants down. And you said, yeah, that's the whole COVID thing. Say more about that, Ben.
Well, I'm just joking because I
Yeah.
keep seeing when I talk to friends, people are saying I haven't worn pants in a week.
Like the guy
Everyone's,
listening on a webinar, but he has no pants on, right? Nobody
yeah, everyone's in their PJs or wrapped in a blanket all day.
The king's wearing no clothes. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Yeah. Ben, do you want to talk about your detail? That's good. I like that.
Yeah, sure. I was
and the courage. What happens from the rub? Yeah, that just remembering that something.
Well, I like that. Yeah, I like that she had this thing that had been given to her from family.
Yeah.
Who are, like we acknowledged in the video, like you acknowledged in the beginning of this, that they're all here with you.
Yeah.
All of our past, back to the boom.
Yeah.
And the fact that she had this thing, this bracelet, and all she had to do was rub it together. And I feel like that it's not that there's any magic in the bracelet, it's that doing that reminded her in that moment of where she came from.
Yes.
And it took her off of herself and her fear of just herself and just brought her back to her whole line for a second, which gave her enough strength to move forward, you know?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by that. And I know that that's, you know, we do that. It's not so much, you know, I have this little thing here that has a particular kind of a meaning to me, this little stone.
Yeah.
Where's the camera?
Yeah.
And does it mean anything? No. Is there any magic in it? No. But the notion that I can have some meaning with this and that I can actually feel it when the moment comes that I need it fascinates me. And I love the idea that, like, do I just accept that maybe we need little things to attach meaning to, or can I let go of that altogether and just be okay?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Or a little bit of both somehow.
Yeah.
Different times, you know.
Totally, yeah.
Maybe when we're really down, we need more of those rocks, or maybe when we're really up, we need more of those rocks. I don't know.
Something to actually hold on to.
Something that gives us a grip of, remind us of who we are, because she remembered in that moment, didn't she? That she was the courageous one. Her mom was courageous. She was courageous. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that you can be courageous, right? Like that's the detail for you, Ben, right? I mean, do you feel like you're having to be courageous? Like Marilyn's talking about having to be courageous around her vanity and about so many things. Susan, same thing for you. Are you feeling like you're having to call on some courage in these?
No. I'm having a weird experience of this whole thing. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
Like I'm upset and I'm sad and I'm nervous and I'm you know, I'm cautious and all of those things, but I don't know. There's a sort of a freedom that's come in this experience for me that's kind of blowing my mind. It's great. And I'm thankfully, knock on wood, you know, I'm healthy and the friends of mine that have had this thing are on the mend. But when I'm able to sort of let go of that anxiety portion of this experience, the stuff that I'm going through is fantastic. How present I feel and how, you know, how much when I do go out for a walk somewhere, the nature is blowing my mind and the sky is so blue. Like There's all these little things going on that just that and people working together. Anyway, we'll get into the whole experience of the
Yeah.
COVID, but
Yeah, that collateral beauty that's going on simultaneous, the two channels. Yeah, channel one,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
dying and death and it's horrible and it's hard. And then
Can't really have one without the other, you know, and they're always both present with or without a virus, but we like to not think about that. We like to not, you know, we don't focus on our own death. I mean, some do, I guess,
yeah,
but it's always there. It's just, you know, which part are you taking in, or which part are you using? Because
yeah,
whatever you look at gives you certain fuel, right, in a certain direction. Which one are you taking, or which one are you trying to work with? Anyway.
yeah, yeah. It makes me think of, you know, Brene Brown. People talk about Brene Brown. She's a great researcher of vulnerability and shame and guilt and all that kind of stuff. But she also did a ton of research on joy. And what we're talking, I think what you're talking about is we're pushed back into the heels of ourselves. Of now we have permission to have joy, because she says in the research, she says it's very difficult for people to give themselves permission to have joy for a long period of time. They can do it. They can do little smart. Okay, this is fun. Okay, now I got to get back to work, because the pennies drop. You know, the foreboding and the forbidden joy. And so it's almost like that joy we have permission now to truly rest into the fact that actually secretly I'm really enjoying this, you know, and somehow the barrier is gone, and people are discovering all this collateral beauty and creativity. I mean, I know so many artists and musicians that I'm talking to. This is this is fabulous time. This is really great, because they're really now have permission without all the other voices going on, or all the other permissions that there's in different parts.
Get to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm finding that myself. It's just there's this the accessibility of different levels of joy now that we like, if not now, when? Like, this is our time to give ourselves joy, you know. And I think we're finding it. I think you're speaking to that a little bit. And so that does tie in with the courage, though, on the bracelet for me, Ben, with you, because it's a courageous act, you know. In behind all Brene Brown's work is that you're realizing that it's this courageous self that we need to mobilize. And you know, boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. But she was bold enough to stand up to the witch, to remember who she is, and she stood into it. And so when we're courageous, we can give ourselves more joy, as well as give ourselves permission to go into those, you know, the ugly parts of ourselves, the dark parts of ourselves, you know. And so it works in both ways, I think. So I think it is courageous, dude. Like you know, you got it going on. It's good. And some people can't, right? They can't give themselves that joy right now. So it doesn't mean that we shouldn't, but now it's almost like we get to now.
Well, it all, in my experience of it, it's all feeding itself. Like the things that I'm getting joy from are the little places where I can help something, or be helpful to somebody, or, you know, it's those kinds of things that are, as much as the situation is awful and upsetting, having the opportunity now and then to be helpful in some way, or just even to listen because you know somebody is having a hard time with being alone, or being isolated, or any of that stuff. It's like any of those little things gives you so much fuel, you know, gives you so much, like it's almost strange to call it joy, but there is an excitement in it. You know, there is a pleasure in it.
No, that's very good. No, I'm glad you said that. Okay, good. Well, look, let's keep going. Roxanne, Penelope, Christine, anybody want to jump in there?
I can.
Oh, okay.
Who?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Penelope. Yeah, you said somehow
Going inside of
ending
herself.
inside herself. Yes.
Where is that? I feel like that the invitation from the last story of the caterpillar,
The Rainmaker story. Yeah, we looked at.
yeah, the Rainmaker story and the caterpillar. It was such an invitation that my soul just responded to, and so I've naturally been able to go inside of myself, and I feel like I'm responding in such a much calmer way to the planet. So, and I feel like I'm seeing, and I feel seen by the planet with both and with warm eyes. So the response is much softer, and it's naturally courageous. If that makes sense. It's that because I'm not feeling like I'm watching myself from the outside in, and I'm not being watched from the outside, that I can respond from the inside. And so that to respond from that place feels naturally fearless.
And courageous. Yeah, beautiful. So no gaze coming at you, that positive or negative, just the absence of that, because you're naturally restoring your own courage to want to then bring some softer, you know, maybe even more bolder
I feel like I've been saying right from the beginning, although at first there was some fear and some hesitancy, because of course because my lungs are that much are a little bit compromised, so there's some fear of, oh wow, this would not be a good thing to get, which it but once I let that sort of dissipate, I found the lack of pressure has been a very big part of this, and whether I'm not sure if that's just from being able to go inside of myself, or everything just seems softer somehow.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's true. That softness is in the air. You know, you can smell it, you can taste it, you can feel it. It's atmospheric in lots of ways, isn't it? Yeah.
And you know, and from that place, you know, because my response to this isolation has been to naturally go to that place of self-care, which I've been neglecting, I think, a little in the past. I now feel really, really resourced, and okay, now what can I do to help?
Yeah.
You know,
it's neat to feel.
Yeah, I feel less it's just less pressure from the inside, from the outside, from the world, that you know, it just that. So really, I mean, I think a lot of this is come from that allow myself to fall into the arms of that natural great peace that we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Like yeah, almost that you're supported naturally, and you like somehow that natural great peace has got your back, and you can rest into that, and from that then naturally you want to go out and be more courageous in your life, and in a conversation, or you know, at the grocery store, or, you know, wherever, you know.
And there's no pressure of feeling the need to do something, or to be someone, or to take a certain action because somebody's expecting that of me.
Expectations are all up for grabs now. They're really shifting, aren't they? And we do a lot better without expectations. It's almost like one of the many spiritual teachings, if you can call it that, or the teachings of COVID, is that we really get to re-examine these expectations on ourselves or from other people, and whether we want to buy into that anymore or not, get attached or identified to it, right? And without that, there's a lot of restoration of our own natural great peace and our own spirits, our own who we really are. Yeah.
And alongside of that, because I'm not feeling pressured by that outside expectation, that outside judgment of how I'm living my life, or what I should be, whether it's sort of an internal judgment or an external judgment of self. I'm able to let go of that judgy me as well, like sort of, oh, she's not really being totally true in her quarantine, or I've got a couple of younger people around me that are supposed to be actually in quarantine, but at first I felt a little judgy of how that was being carried out. And then I thought, as long as I'm keeping myself safe and there's nobody that's actually compromised, that can't speak for themselves, it's none of my business. And it just, that freedom that came from that. So letting go of all those crunchy bits and pieces that hold on, it's like letting go of a whole bunch of crustaceans, and like the judgment, the expectation, because I feel like it's being let go of. I'm letting go of it around myself and about myself. I'm able to let go of it around, of other people as well.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Yeah, good for you. Nice. Well, very good. Roxanne, what would, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Roxanne, your detail was signpost.
The signpost.
Yes. Love the signpost. Yeah, where's that in your life? Where is that showing up? Are you, yeah.
Well, staying home makes you do the things you're always saying you're going to do at home.
Yeah.
Doing the creative things for me, and it's very easy for me when I'm at home to avoid all the things that I like to do, the creative things. So what I liked about the signpost was she could have just done anything but she stayed with the Freedom Mountain, and it was almost like she was taking the village with her. And then she could take, when she went back, she could take what she learned, because nobody else had ever come back.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
So yeah.
And are you seeing that in your life? Like you're seeing that in playing itself out too, that you're actually choosing Freedom Mountain over all the other options?
I think so, yeah. I have to use a little self-discipline. meaning I need to sort of talk to myself, because it's like the signpost. There's so many things that I enjoy doing, and I want to do all of them, and then I end up doing none of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's really good for me. It's helping me focus a little more and tune in.
And what's that like for you, Roxanne, when you're able to focus and give yourself that gift to?
Oh, I'm totally happy. I forget to eat and just keep going. There's no sense of time or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful thing. You're just lost in the reverie of your art making. John Keats used to call it the business of soul making. We're making soul. We're using our hands to do something that brings beauty into the world, right? And I don't know if that isn't freedom. I don't know what is, right? Like if we're not able to be creative and be a creator in our life, somehow work with the stuff of our life and create something and fully express that. That's quite a gift. So long may that continue, that you give yourself permission, even though the witch might show up and say, we're not going to do any painting today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. she's having a bad hair day, you know, she forgot to put her pants on, you know, who knows?
Don't forget it. We won't do anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She's got a life of her own. I mean, I love about this story. It kind of names pretty well about who we have to work with every day, and our job is to somehow find a way to befriend her. I mean, what are some ways? We've got to finish up here, but I want to say, what are some ways that we can all, maybe there's one way each that we can acknowledge our witches. What's a good way for each of us to acknowledge our witch? Like maybe one thing that would enable, like for some people they want to paint the witch. That's a way of honoring her. Then you see her, you know, and then okay, there you are. Yeah, you're part of my lineage. Okay. Yeah, okay, that you're reminding me that I need to continue to be courageous. You know, I need to continue to step into it. So what's one thing that each of you could do that would allow you to acknowledge the witch and continue to claim Freedom Mountain? I mean, that's in the end what's at stake here, right?
To actually make a statement that she's out rather than try to cover her up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Be truthful. Yeah, she's out. There she is. Yeah, yeah.
I'd say for me, it's naming my feeling, but being very specific. Like not just saying, "Oh, I feel happy," but to say, "I feel light," or "I feel." Delighted, but use detailed words to describe my feelings, and then whether no matter where it is on the rainbow of colors of feelings.
Yeah,
I find it very helpful.
Yeah, there's something about accurate language that she wants us to use. I want to say it's like there's a like we need to acknowledge like specifically like a sensory grounded kind of language, and I think that's part of what you're saying. That's useful, that it needs to be like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's very good. Yeah. Let's keep going. Susan?
Well, I think that the witch, like the pandemic, etc. I think when you look to things like that, and these horrendous events, etc., there will always be gifts in it, and the gift is either reminding us of who we really are and where our strengths can be, or in the case of the pandemic, the awful news about it, but you can find 100 stories in various places of the heroics and the kindness and the compassion and the people who are seizing upon this horrible moment to do some really loving work in the world, and I find that there's balance in that, just as there's balance within ourselves. If we look at those horrible events and say, okay, there's something in this for me, there's something I can learn, something I can grow, something that will strengthen me to go with greater enthusiasm or more bravery up the mountain. And what is that? If it's embracing the witch, or she's teaching me about that within me that has the strength to repel her or have compassion for her, to acknowledge her and say, okay, that's there, but that's not all of me. That's just a tiny little piece of me, and it's coming out to teach me about my capacity for braveness and courage. And
wow, beautiful.
And I can go on.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if we acknowledge her, if we see that acknowledgement, then comes the courage. Like Ben says, it's like when you remember that you stand on the shoulders, you remember your rocks, you remember that lineage, you remember who you are, then you remember the courage.
Yeah.
And when you remember the courage, you're in the game. And when you're in the game, you're not on the sidelines. You're actually in the game.
Yeah.
And being
it's not happening to you.
What's that?
It's not happening to you.
No.
You're a participant,
Yeah.
rather than it. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. No, that's right. So that's very good. And for you, Ben, what would you say is a good way of acknowledging, or a good way of keeping this in mind? Because it's what's at stake is Freedom Mountain. I mean, I don't know. I think it's available. So
I think with the lack of pressure that's usually there to be somewhere, to do something and do all the things, gives us an opportunity to wake up in the morning and just make the decision to approach how we feel with curiosity rather than with grasping hands.
Mm.
You know,
Mhm.
so I think that for me that's helping, and that does help, is to go, oh, what am I'm feeling that, am I? Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. And now what?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, to be able to go, how does that want to be light? Somebody somewhere, I don't know where it came from, told me that all darkness wants to move to the light. And I suppose I don't know, in whatever context, maybe that's true. But if that is true, then just the curiosity when the darkness comes,
Yeah.
to go, how do you want to get to the light?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, I like that. That's very good. It reminds me of Rilke's poem. He says, "No feeling is final."
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you're being curious. Oh,
Yeah.
there it is. Okay, wow, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, and it's passing.
And it's,
passing
it's
through.
like a cloud. Here it comes. Like winter passes, right? Like and if we especially can be less attached and less identified with the whole thing, it can be, if we're just curious. Wow, that's a great word. I love it.
Yeah.
Christine, I think, is gone. Roxanne, what would you say for you is a good way to acknowledge the witch?
Just being kind to her.
Mm.
Sort of befriending her.
What does she need more than anything? What does the witch need more than anything?
She just needs to be acknowledged.
And
help. Pardon?
No, go ahead.
To be acknowledged, to be invited, be treated with respect, not pushed aside and sort of diminished.
Remember that the opposite of acknowledgement is being ignored. When somebody's ignored, that's a soul. That is so devastating for the soul. People would rather be abused. People don't understand this, but in abusive relationships, at least they're getting some attention.
Right.
To not have attention is one of the most vexatious things that could ever happen to us. And so for us to acknowledge her, to befriend her, all of those things that you're talking about, Roxanne, is exactly right. I mean, she needs to be loved. This poor woman, this poor man, these people. I don't know if you've actually met people like Baba Yaga. I met people like that, and boy, they're just starving. They can't help the fact that they look weird or funny, or they got terrible training. But boy, when they can be acknowledged, the grin and the smile comes on their face is just like they've died and gone to heaven. So I think in the end we go a long way to acknowledge and befriend, and just to notice that, okay, there's that part of me that doesn't make it as a spiritual warrior, but also that it's not pretty, or like Mary Lynn was saying, like, we're not, these are parts of us that are not, we can be very shameful about, but if we see them and acknowledge them, it's the opposite of shame, and then we can, within that, there's a tremendous freedom.
Yeah.
And we can paint more. We can spend more time in Freedom Mountain, disappearing into hours of work and play and creation and poetry, and yeah. All right.
Can I say something really quickly in terms of art? Is that there's, sometimes art that has like a deliberate ugliness in the painting, and even perhaps in contrast to beauty in the same painting is quite, I find it's very stimulating, to the array of emotions. And so again, embracing it all.
Yeah. And thank you for teeing me up for next week. Next week, we're going to talk some more about beauty and teachings of it. There's many different layers of beauty, but there's the cultural beauty, there's kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of beauty, if you will. There's different layers of that. And I think this is also part of what we need to wade into. One of the treasures in this story is this idea that we have, and I don't mean beauty as in terms of like just being a fantastic actor or a fantastic painter or a fantastic creative person. I mean it in other ways as well. And that's part of what we want to wade into a little bit next week. And we're going to reiterate the story in an abbreviated fashion, and then we're going to open up some more space around some of the teachings in the story. So I want to thank you all for joining me. If you've got questions, I must go, but I mean, if you've got questions, email me. I'm happy to wade into it, talk some more if you need a bit of support around this. If you're noticing that you're doing fine, this is just great, and keep going, you know, and be good with that. No feeling is final. You keep moving through it, and it's good. But also that we're doing this once a week. Thursdays at 1, and then we're also doing Monday to Friday. Just allowing us to restore ourselves, like nature is restoring itself. We also can do that same thing if we just we take away some of the layers and the thoughts and the judgments and the expectations that we have for ourselves. We naturally start to restore as well. And so what we're seeing on the outside in nature, we also need to do our part, you know. And there's an incredible invitation for that in the Monday mornings, Monday to Friday morning, 7:31 on Instagram Live. That's where we're doing that. It's 10-15 minutes. It's all free. It's all part of what we're doing, part of this restoration. We need stories, and to me, we need stillness, and then we need support. And this is part of what we're doing here today, is supporting each other and learning. There's my bell. I must go. Great to see you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Michael.
Be well,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good to see everybody.
Ciao.
see
Have a
you.
good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.